I was on the U-Bahn, the subway system here in Munich, a couple of weeks ago. I am just sitting there, zoning out, looking at my phone, and this kid gets on. And when I say kid, I mean this child was maybe 6 years old. Tops. He was wearing this little brightly colored, oversized backpack, carrying a bakery pretzel that was literally the size of his entire head. And he was completely, 100% alone. No parent, no older sibling, just this tiny human commuting on a busy city train like a 40-year-old accountant. And my American brain immediately went into full panic mode. I was like, wait, where is the adult? Do I need to intervene? Has this child been abandoned? Is there a lost child situation happening right in front of me? But then I looked around the train car, and nobody else even blinked. People were just reading their books or listening to music. And that is when it really hit me how fundamentally different the entire concept of childhood is over here. Because from an American perspective, leaving a 6-year-old to figure out public transit completely alone sounds totally irresponsible, right? Like, that is a fast track to someone calling the police or Child Protective Services in the US. But over here in Germany, it is just a random Tuesday morning. German parenting looks, frankly, incredibly dangerous to an outsider. But once you actually live here, once you observe the systems they have in place, you realize it is actually kind of genius. But we will get to the crazy part about how their infrastructure actually allows for this in a minute. First, I need to explain the massive psychological difference in how our cultures view risk. If you go on any expat forum online, like the Germany subreddit or TikTok, you will constantly see panicked Americans posting about how wild German parents are. Because in the US, I feel like our default parenting mode, and obviously I am speaking generally here based on what we see in the culture, is risk elimination. We baby-proof the entire house. We put soft foam on the corners of the coffee table. We hover right behind our kids at the playground to make sure they do not climb too high. We want to prevent the fall at all costs. In Germany, the philosophy is much more about risk assessment. They want the kid to learn gravity. Wait, actually, let me rephrase that. They do not want the kid to get hurt, obviously, but they deeply believe that experiencing minor consequences is how you learn not to do something stupid later on. Children need to learn where their physical boundaries are by testing them. You see this most obviously at German playgrounds. American playgrounds have become these very safe, plastic, brightly colored structures low to the ground with that bouncy rubber mulch underneath. German playgrounds are another level of terrifying. They look like medieval training camps. They are built out of massive wooden logs, huge climbing towers, rope bridges suspended way too high in the air, and just hard-packed sand or gravel at the bottom. And you will see toddlers dangling from these ropes while their parents are sitting on a bench 30 feet away drinking a coffee, not even looking at them. And a massive reason for this difference is liability culture. In America, if a kid falls off a high swing and breaks an arm, the parents might sue the city, or sue the school board, or sue the playground manufacturer. So city councils are terrified of lawsuits, which means they build boring, ultra-safe playgrounds. Germany just does not have that same fear of litigation. If your kid climbs a massive wooden tower and falls and breaks an arm, the general German attitude is basically, well, that sucks, maybe they should have held on tighter. You cannot sue the city because your kid was clumsy. The society accepts that scraped knees and bruised egos are a completely normal, unavoidable part of growing up. And this goes even further with things like the Wald kindergarten system, the forest kindergartens. This completely blew my mind when I first learned about it. There are thousands of these across Germany. You drop your 3 or 4-year-old off in literal woods. Rain, snow, mud, freezing cold, whatever. They are outside all day long. And they give these toddlers real tools, like actual pocket knives to whittle sticks. They let them build fires, real burning fires. I saw a video recently of a German kindergarten where a 4-year-old was casually striking a match to light a candle, while the teacher just sat back and watched with her hands in her pockets. If you did that in a Midwest suburb, the neighborhood Facebook group would absolutely melt down. But the German teachers will tell you, if you give a kid a real tool and teach them it is dangerous, they learn respect for it. If you only give them plastic safety scissors, they never learn how to actually handle sharp objects in the real world. But here's the thing, and this is where Americans often get it wrong when they try to compare the two countries. We look at this incredible independence and we think, wow, German parents are just so much more relaxed and brave than we are. But it is not just a willpower thing, it is a structural thing. You cannot just copy paste German parenting into an American city and expect it to work safely. Because the physical environment in Germany is legally and physically designed to keep these independent kids safe. Think about the infrastructure. When I saw that 6-year-old on the U-Bahn, he was not trying to cross a 6-lane highway with cars doing 50 miles an hour. He was using a public transit system that is predictable, well lit, and heavily used by the general public at all hours. German cities are highly walkable. They even have these things called Spielstraßen, which translates to play streets. It is a specific traffic designation in residential areas where cars are legally required to drive at walking speed. Like literal walking speed. Pedestrians and children playing in the street have the absolute right of way. If a car hits a kid in a Spielstraße, the driver is basically entirely at fault, no questions asked. So the physical space prioritizes a child's right to exist outside over a car's right to move quickly through a neighborhood. In America, we keep kids inside fenced backyards or buckle them into the back seat of an SUV because the world outside the front door is completely dominated by fast-moving cars. We literally have to drive them everywhere because there are no sidewalks. So American kids do not get that daily, low-stakes independence of just walking down to the bakery to buy a bread roll, because the bakery is 3 miles away across a massive strode. And there is also a massive community aspect to this. When a German kid is walking to school alone at 7 years old, which is the absolute standard here, by the way, schools even have police officers map out the safest walking routes for first graders. They aren't actually totally unsupervised. They are supervised by the society. There is this unspoken social contract here in Germany that everyone looks out for everyone else's kids, and everyone feels entitled to correct them. If a kid is doing something genuinely life-threatening or wildly disrespectful on the train, a random German grandma walking by with her groceries will absolutely yell at them. They do not have that American hesitation of, oh, I shouldn't discipline someone else's child, that is not my place. No, the community acts as a massive safety net, so the parents can let go, knowing that the neighborhood is effectively acting as the guardrails. But how did this start? Like, why did Germany go in this hyper-independent direction while the US went toward helicopter parenting? It is actually super fascinating if you look at the history, because for a long time, German parenting was heavily associated with strict authoritarian discipline. You know, the stereotype that children should be seen and not heard, very rigid rules, intense obedience. But after World War II, there was a massive cultural reckoning in this country. A lot of psychologists and educators started looking at authoritarianism and realized, hey, blindly following orders and never questioning authority led us to a really, really dark place as a nation. So in the 1960s and 70s, there was this huge anti-authoritarian movement in German parenting and education. The idea was that if you want to raise democratic citizens who can think for themselves, who can push back against bad ideas, and who have strong internal morals, you have to let them make their own decisions from a very young age. You have to give them autonomy. So this extreme independence is not just about convenience for the parents. It is literally rooted in a conscious effort to build a healthier, more independent thinking society. Now, does that mean it is a perfect utopia and America is completely wrong? No. Honestly, it can be a really jarring transition for foreigners, and there are absolute trade-offs. The adjustment period for American expats is brutal. You are constantly fighting your own anxiety because the social pressure here works in reverse. In the US, you get judged by other moms if you take your eyes off your kid for 5 seconds. In Germany, you get judged if you hover too much. If you follow your kid up the slide to make sure they do not slip, the other parents look at you like you are completely stunting your child's development. It can feel really isolating for foreigners who are just trying to keep their kids safe according to the standards they grew up with. But observing it for a few years now, I honestly have so much respect for the German approach. It forces you to realize that a lot of what we consider safety in the US is actually just control. We over-supervise because our environment is built for machines instead of people. Germany accepts that life has risks, and instead of hiding kids from those risks, they just teach them how to handle them. And honestly, seeing these tiny kids confidently travel across the city, buy their own snacks, and solve their own playground disputes, it makes me think they might just be onto something.